Hello, you guys. We had some technical difficulties, but we are back and we're just going to take a moment because this night is extremely important for us to be able to connect with you all, and more importantly, for us to keep our word, and that is to talk about starting your family research, which is super exciting. So if you're here and you're watching, whether it's now or later, we are grateful that you guys are chiming in. And for those who don't know us, my name is Kiana, and this is
Kyle.
And we started Under the Willow strictly because we decided to get back into family research, genealogy research during COVID. Mm-hmm. And Kyle came up with this genius idea, and it was to basically empower people to begin their family research, because he saw, and I don't want to take too much of your shine, but you can share.
Really interesting, because I don't even remember thinking of it. I feel like you did it first, because you always have these type of forethoughts. But yeah, I think it's, as we think more about our ancestry and where we come from, at least I know we have thought about that. And I'm sure folks from all over the country, all over the world, are thinking about their own lineage and where they've come from. And so why not have a platform where we're helping folks figure out their actual lineage? And that's where, Under the Willow Tree came.
Yes. So if you are watching, feel free to comment or ask any questions in the live chat as we're talking a little bit about our topic tonight. If you are not following us on Instagram, we have an Instagram that I'm going to get started pretty soon. But in the meantime, you can follow Dania Vita on Instagram, and you can also follow our Facebook group, Under the Willow Tree Genealogy Society. You can find it on Facebook and join the group. And be able to connect with the community of researchers and folks who are just as excited to begin their family research. So y'all know that we're pretty unorthodox in our practices. So this isn't going to be a traditional type of video. We don't have a slide presentation. We are strictly just going to speak based off of our own experiences and try to create a list of things that you should incorporate when beginning your family research. So if you have your phone nearby and you want to take notes, or if you have a pen and paper, this is your time to go ahead and get that before we dive deep into some of the tips and tools that we have for you all this evening. All right, cool. So I think the best way that we can begin is to talk about our experience starting our family research. And it kind of ties into the first tip that we have for you all. So when I was beginning my family research, it was my father who came to me and gave me the names of individuals, some elders who were like my great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, and names that I could really work with that would help me begin my family research. So the tip that we have for you, number one, is deciding what side of the family you want to research. I know that can be pretty tricky, especially if you are extremely interested in one side of the family, but may have limited information. But the best advice that we have for you all is to begin with the side of the family where you have at least some information to work off of.
Right. And from there, you want to think about, with all the information, well, after you decide which side of the family you want to work on, thinking about how do you want to keep record of all this information that you're going to get. And so what most, or at least many researchers do, they start a family tree. And the way that you do this, you can go to some of the larger genealogical, tongue twister, platforms like Ancestry.com, like Family Research, like MyHeritage. Those particular platforms are great. That'll allow you to start building out your family tree once you have particular information. And
yeah, and that's perfect. It's really, really important if you're watching this and you're like, Okay, great. I know exactly what side of the family that I want to begin on because I have a name that I can work with. So it's really important to make sure that you start off on the good foot with organizing your research. So like Kai has suggested, either getting an ancestry account. If you're looking for a free account, Family Search is the best route to go.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep in mind that with Family Search, it is raw documents, which means those documents haven't completely been transcribed. So if you go on Ancestry and you have a subscription there, you're able to get transcribed documents.
Mm-hmm.
But also, if you're a member of our community, the goal for us is to be able to provide that support where we can find those transcribed records for you. But we'll talk about that a little bit later towards the end. So number one, decide what side, maternal or paternal.
Mm-hmm.
And then number two, get as much information as you can from whichever matriarch or individual that's sharing this information. So it could be your parent, it can be an adult that's a part of your family.
Mm-hmm. And once you've figured out which platform you want to use, how do you start your research from there? You start with yourself. You know the most about you. And so you'll be able to plug in that particular information from you, and then you can work your way backward. So you can start with you, then your mother or your father, depending on which side you're on, and then their parents and so forth and so on. This is the easiest way to start your search. Mm-hmm. And these particular platforms, they're great because they all aggregate public vital records. And so your vital records are places where you lived. And
well, let's slow up because I know I get excited too, but you're hitting some really good points. I just want to slow down so we can flesh out some of the things, some of the definitions that we're discussing. So I wanted to tap back into what Kai has said about deciding what side of the family you want to begin your research on. So let's say, for instance, you are, again, researching your maternal side of your family. So that's your mother's side. Your paternal side is your father's side. Did I get that right? Because I know sometimes I mix it up. So if you're, when he says, what Kai is saying about working backwards is that is the best reminder you can have when you're starting your research, because I know it can be exciting when you pull up those census records and you see, 1870, you see 1910, you see all these different years, but it's truly, truly important to start with the latest date of documents that you find and then begin to work your way backwards. So when we talk about transcribed records, I see that somebody had asked, transcribed records means records that have been transcribed in a way that you can so it can be understood.
They made it legible. A lot of the time, these particular records, because they're so old, it's hard to really read them. And so these particular platforms, they've recruited volunteers really to sit down and sift through each one and look through them and type them out so folks can read them and interpret them.
Yes. So when you're thinking about documents that date back to like 1870, you're looking at a type of cursive that is very, very, it was like deep. It's way, way back when. So you have individuals like Kai was saying that can look at that, the way that things are written and being able to decipher them. Mm-hmm. So on Family Search, those records are not transcribed for you. You're going to have to really use your expertise to decipher those documents on your own. However, again, through our community, the goal is to be able to find those transcribed records and to get them to you all. But if you're really, really interested in just being a part of that service, I would get an Ancestry account so you can be able to have access to those records that have already been transcribed through the system. Mm-hmm. All right. So let's pick up where you left off, because you were digging really deep and you were bringing up the importance of vital records. So whenever you begin your family research, or if you're in the process of family research, right? This is the third point. So keep up. I think number one, we had to decide what side you're going to begin your research on. Number two is basically sourcing your information. So making sure that you have, at least a name to go off of. But if you, for instance, say, oh, well, my parent didn't know their parent, or, all I have is a last name to go off of, that is okay. Do your best to be able, you have your work cut out for you, but the whole goal is to, okay, if I have a last name, then I need to think about my location. But anyways, so your vital records are all of the records that you're going to come across, from birth certificate, death certificate, marriage license. Marriage license. Those are your vital records. I feel like I might be missing something, but did I say death record? And then you also have your historical records, which is the census. And so I want to stop there and talk a little bit about the U.S. Census records.
Yeah. So the U.S. Census records are basically, I guess it's what it is. It's a record that keeps a count of how many people are living where in any geographical area of the country. And so for genealogists or people who are researching their family in general, these census are great because it allows you to see how your family lived, maybe what they did for work, how many people were living in your household, in your family's household. Some records will have folks who may not actually be a part of your immediate family living with them. And so that helps create like a story behind that as well. But the census in particular, they're used to for you to really, what do you call it when you are you have information and you are trying to use that the census record to counter, yes, yeah, or to counter to that's validate your what you already know. Yeah, it's like your census is going to be like your favorite vital record, your favorite historical record to hold on to refer back to, especially when you want to double confirm, like for a fact that the person that was, that you were told was the child of your great grandparent is for certain the child of your great grandparent. So, they were living. And the thing about the census record is it tells you not only the name, but you can find some good stuff on there. Like I found on census records, the mother of, my great grandfather's wife. And that led me to, more information about her. So the census records can really, if you actually look at the document versus looking at the transcribed information, because that's another way that you can get caught up. So this is a tip, write it down or take note. When you're looking at the US Census, make sure you look at the actual document. So what they do is they upload the actual document and you'll be able to see the transcribed information, but you'll also be able to see the information on the US Census, on the census record. So make sure that you look at it so you can pick up any other information that may have been overlooked by the volunteer that was transcribing the record. And also keeping in mind that when you're looking at this information, back then things were spelled differently, things were said differently. So, you might have, for instance, Kyle's surname is Ritchie, and Ritchie was spelled two different ways. So don't be, deterred away if you see, something spelled a certain way, your surname spelled one way, but it's referred differently on another document. So that's why it's important to look at these records. Right. If anything, make a note of it, write it down. So when you're doing your research, you can use different variations of your surname, because back then they didn't have a really standard form of English. So they really wrote it how they heard it. Yes. So far as you're journeying and you're doing these this research and you're looking at these vital records and you've decided what side of the family you're going to start on, it's really important to make sure that you're organizing your information. So sometimes, we organize our information differently. We might write down in a journal to keep track of names.
We might open up a spreadsheet and create, keep information logged in that way. We might print out, the documents that we find to look a little bit deeper. What's another way? Oh, and the family tree. So you can do your family tree on Family Search. You can start it, again, starting with yourself and working backwards. And just keep in mind when you're looking for that historical record, which is the US Census record, that's the first record that you're probably going to come across. You're going to make sure that you start backwards. All right. So you start with the latest year that you can find and work your way backwards. That being because we weren't put on the US Census until 1870. And if you are some of the rare families that were possibly freed before emancipation, then you might show up on a non-population census, or you might even show up on a census earlier in that year. Is there anything else? And I'm not sure how many people are watching this, but if you guys have any more questions, or if you want us to go a little bit deeper into what we just talked about, feel free to let us know. But in the meantime, we're just going to keep it rolling. So another thing that's extremely important when you're starting your family research is to double check. Make sure that you don't get too excited when you see some information. And one way that we double check is checking the race. That's like the easiest way that you can check, because you might look up John Henry and there might be 5011 John Henrys that lived in Charles County in, 1870. So it's important to make sure that when you're looking at that census, you're looking at every category in that census.
Right. And always keep in mind about where your family is from, because you'll see, like he said, you'll see a lot of John Henrys, but you want to pinpoint, look at the race, you want to pinpoint the actual city or town, and make sure it's synonymous to where your family originated from. What else?
No, that's good. I want to stay there a little bit more and talk about location. So say, for example, you have a name of your great grandparent, and you're like, I know that they were born in Virginia, but I'm not really sure where in Virginia. So sometimes the best way to really, again, question everything that you're researching, because this is all based off of theory. As African Americans, it is extremely difficult at times to really pinpoint the exact information that we're looking for. So we have to kind of go down many paths and create many branches until we finally center in on the exact information that we're looking for. So if you had an ancestor who was born in Virginia, but you're not sure where, sometimes I look at the surname, and sometimes I have to research the individuals who had that surname when they came and colonized the Americas. So if I know that Johnson is the surname that I'm looking for, and that the Johnson surname was founded or was occupying Virginia, then I look at in Google, I literally just Google, Johnsons who, lived in Virginia in the 1700s, Johnsons in the 1800s. And sometimes it's kind of a wild goose chase, because you have to constantly, test all these theories against the information that you're finding. But I guarantee you, when you're looking up that ancestor, that census is really going to help you out. So you can go down each county in Virginia, and once you find, an area in a time frame that makes the most sense, then you kind of just test your information against, what you're finding.
Right. And another way to test your information on what you're finding is to reach out to an elder in your family who knows a lot about your family, or who's old enough, have lived long enough. For instance, my grandparents had 12 children, And I didn't know all 12 because some of them died way before I was born. And so when I saw some names on the census, I wanted to cross-reference or cross-check those particular names with my actual aunts and uncles who are alive and say, hey, do you know does a Rosalie Ritchie sound familiar to you? So yes, that's my sister. And they might go into a story about, their particular life, but it's always, if you have someone who was alive during those particular moments, it's really great to be able to cross-check with them if you can.
Yes, oral history is definitely one way that our community has kept information going and alive. You might have heard your granny talk about, their mom or their dad, or you might have heard stories about a great aunt or a great uncle. And so sometimes, again, respectfully, it's important to reach out to your elders. And that's if they have the willingness to want to talk about those things, because there's so many ways, and we'll probably make another video about how to source that information respectfully. But as someone who doesn't really have any elders to reach out to, like I have, my father, or I have a cousin or an aunt, or an older cousin who was able to tell me this information. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like a grandparent, but it can be, anyone that has any information that could help you get started on your research. So don't feel defeated if you only have just a name. That's okay. You have yourself, and you might have another person adjacent to you that could help piece these things together. But if you don't, I do suggest doing a DNA test. Ancestry is the most popular. Ancestry DNA is the most popular. You can have them destroy your information and no longer keep it in their laboratory. It is an option once you register your DNA kit. I know there's a lot of rumors that go around and say like, oh, they keep your information. No, they have an option to erase, to get rid of your DNA and no longer keep it at their facility. So what that will be able to do is not only you have the information that you're researching and the documents you're looking, but you also have DNA that you can add, that you can look at and connect with other family members who are, who knows, across the continent, that can help you connect all of the pieces.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we're coming up on our time, and I just wanted, to see if there's anything else, Kyle, that you want to add to the docket for folks who are just starting their family research. I think we've covered a lot of good ground. Again, like this is going to be a series, so we'll have a bunch of different videos. And next time we won't have technical difficulties. We're still getting familiar with this YouTube live streaming. So if you have any questions, again, we're going to leave this up maybe for about 2 days or so, just so you guys can get it. But I probably might want to do another video that's a little bit more formal so we can give you guys the visuals. But for the most part, feel free to reach out to us through our Facebook group. Again, that's Under the Willow Tree Genealogy Society. You can just search it in Facebook and you'll find our group and you can join it. And feel free to follow Dania Vita on Instagram. And Under the Willow is also on Instagram if you want to follow us there. But thank you so much, you guys, for taking the time out to tune in and listen to us kick off our passion project, because I'm so hyped and so excited.
Yes, and there is one thing I want to say.
Yes.
Before we leave. So all this journey, it is a beautiful journey, and it can feel as if it's daunting sometimes, but just always, think about the 3 things that we talked about today. Figuring out which side of the family you want to start your research on, figuring out which platform you want to start using to aggregate your family information, and 3, start with what you know, which is yourself. And it's going to be a very beautiful journey, discovering a lot, and you'll learn more about yourself.
That's beautiful. I agree. All right, you all. Thank you for tuning in to our live stream and our kickoff of our genealogy series for Under the Willow Tree Genealogy Society. I'm Kiana, and this is
Kyle.
And we are out. Peace.
Peace.